So welcome to today's show. Today's guest is Lynn Rosenberg, author of My Sexual Awakening at 70. So welcome to the show, Lynn.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So the book then, obviously it's a very controversial title in some respects. Where did that come from? So if you could maybe give a bit of a background as to why it's a sexual awakening and what the background to that is, Lynn, for me, please.
Well, first, I had to realize that I was repressed. And it came from my family, particularly my mother, who told me she and my father found me on a chaise lounge with a boy at a resort called Highland Springs. And it was the first time that I was kissing anybody or, being in a romantic situation with somebody. And they came out and my father said to the boy, "Go away." And my mother said, any woman who likes sex is a prostitute. So that was kind of the background of my life, how I became repressed.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because whether it's a sexual belief or a monetary belief or a success-based belief, especially as kids, we are very malleable, aren't we? In terms of what people say to us, we take literally. As an example, we believe Santa Claus is real up until the age of 6 or 7, and if we think about it logically, it's very unlikely that that's going to be the case. But because we believe that, our behaviours change. We leave out the carrots and the milk and the mince pies and expect presents to be there. So that statement that your mother made has obviously changed your perception on things. And you mentioned a repression there. How did that then affect the period from, I think you were 14, weren't you, at the time, with regards to the boy? How did that change over the period from 14 to obviously your book at age 70? Because that's quite a big span of time. What did the journey look like along there in terms of changing those belief systems and obviously the behavior as well beyond that?
This repression took me through my life until late, even including my marriage. I still had that good girl, that had to be a good girl image in my mind. And it was how I developed into this. I had to see it for myself, the repression. And I did one day when I was moving from one place to another and evaluating what to keep, what to give away. And then I evaluated myself and realized I hadn't had sex in a very long time. And I didn't like it. I was tired of it and I wanted to change it. So one day when I was in my urologist's office, after the exam, she was walking out of the door and I said, "I haven't had an orgasm in 12 years. And she said, "Go get some porn and a vibrator." And I did what the doctor ordered.
So it was a psychologist you saw, wasn't it?
No, that was my urologist, but
Oh,
then
urologist.
my psychologist played a huge role in my developing and coming to be sexually free.
So we'll talk about the urologist then first. So they gave you a piece of advice, a vibrator and pornography. How did that make you feel in terms of taking that advice? Were you nervous? Where did you obviously go to get these bits of or to get those parts that the doctor ordered, as you said? And then how did that develop into the psychology side and beyond?
I took her advice, no, seriously. And I was excited. That was the feeling. Excited. Oh my God, here's someone who's recognizing what I'm going through. And so I was excited.
Is that because, again, so as human beings, we are, again, very malleable. And what people tell us, we tend to take in and then either accept or reject. So when you're the younger you are, the lesser you reject and the more you just accept. So obviously when your mother said these things, you just take what your mum and dad say as gospel and obviously behave in that way. But was it maybe an excitement on the basis that a doctor has told you to do these things apart, aside from, your friend Jill, as an example?
Absolutely.
Is it that authority figure that
Yes.
made you take that action?
Yes.
So they've given you that advice. What were the next steps then?
The next step was when I went to my psychologist, and there I was nervous to tell him about the vibrator and the video. And he could see evidently that I was nervous. And he said, I've heard it all. I've heard it all. So I told him that I had this stuff, but I was getting tired of it and I didn't want to keep going back to the sex store. And he said, there's free porn on the net. Oh my God, I had no idea. I had no idea. So again, I was excited because this was new information to me that could help me on my way. So I went home and I Googled free porn, and a bunch of stuff came up, and that was the next step. And then after that, do you want me to continue?
Yeah, continue.
After that, I saw a tape that really intrigued me. And it was of a man naked and a woman. And all she did was talk and touch and talk. And she would ask him erotic questions while she was doing this. And it was very hot. And so that was fun. And then after a while, I got tired of that. And I told my doctor, I really feel like I'd like some company, some kind of relationship, but I don't have one right now. And he said, there are free sex sites on the net. And I said to myself, oh no, no way. No way am I going to join a sex site. But I often say no before I say yes. And so I looked it up and I found a couple of sites. But I said to myself, if I did this, what in the world would I say? I have no idea. And then I remembered the woman on the tape who talked. And I went back to that tape and wrote down word for word what she said. And I used that, and it was great. So that was another part of my journey. And then I wound up writing erotic stories. And I swore I would never meet anybody off this sex dating site. But I did wind up meeting two people. One fellow flew out from Virginia to see me.
So it sounds a lot like fears. So if someone's scared of spiders, for example, you put them in a room with spiders, or you put them through a looking glass with spiders just to get them used to things. And then you might put them in with the spiders. You then might get them to touch a spider, hold the spider. And it sounds to me like you went through a little bit of that, whereby you spoke to the urologist You found the porn and the vibrator, as you said, as the doctor ordered. You've then escalated things and getting more and more comfortable, rather than, because sometimes it's very hard to jump straight into the deep end. We feel out of our depth and we feel nervous because it has to be an escalation, for the most part. So did you find that escalation healthy?
I did. I did. I felt like my whole world had opened up to me. And I was being successful. I mean, after 12 years of not having an orgasm, when I got that toy and the porn tape, I had success for the first time in 12 years.
So you got to that position of changing your thought process. So as we said, it's whether it's the sexual side or whether it's fears, whether it's changing a belief, we have to change that programming and what our brain thinks of. You know, if you're associating sex at 14 with prostitution and bad things, as opposed to associating it with orgasms and fun and excitement. When you had gone through this process, what was the next step then? Did it escalate any further, or did you feel that awakening had happened by then?
Well, I definitely felt an awakening, and afterward, I didn't feel like I needed this stuff anymore. That, I guess, because I got the information from doctors, that had a big impact on me. If a friend had said it, I'm sure I wouldn't have done it. So, and the change was, huge. Huge. I mean, it broke that sort of disturbed messages.
Yeah.
It broke that. And I could leave that behind.
Yeah, it's we have something like what's called schemas in the brain, where when we think of one thing, it leads to another thing, leads to another thing. And it takes some time or a perspective change, as obviously you've had, in order to change that dynamic. And it's funny you mentioned the doctor, the fact that it was a doctor who said it to you, that it wasn't your friend Julie or your friend Tom. And there was a psychological experiment done by Milgram. I don't know if you've heard of this experiment, where they were testing how people react to authority figures. And it basically showed, to cut like a long story short, essentially, that we respond differently to those in authority. We are more likely to listen to them based on their experience, their title, and what we perceive their viewpoint to hold in terms of expertise. Did you seek more than one person's opinion on that? Because every doctor might have a slightly different opinion. Every psychologist, again, might have a slightly different opinion. Or was it a case of you heard exactly what you felt you needed to hear in order to change?
That's exactly right. I felt what I needed to hear. I mean, a couple of the steps I was very hesitant to take, but once I took the steps, it was exhilarating. It was really exhilarating. And when I was doing the sex talk with men on the sex site, it was so exciting to me that I thought that I really wanted to share this with other women, and that it might actually help other women who have gone through what I have. And not only older women. That's what I started with, thinking that it would be older women. And then my hairdresser, who's 40, said, I want to buy your book. And I said, oh no, it's not for you. You're too young. And she said, no. She said, I've had a really difficult background when my parents told me sex is bad. So it's universal to a degree. I mean, it's not that uncommon.
Yeah, I think especially for males versus females, sex is viewed very differently. I think for males, sex is never seen as a bad thing. Your father would never tell you that. Your mother probably doesn't even have those conversations with you. But I think for females, there's a different stigma attached, which again, depending on who you are as an individual and the information that you've been provided with, will determine how you view things. Like
Right.
if there was a study done today that found that smoking cigarettes made you stronger, that would change your view on smoking, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And it's very much like that. So what are you hoping from your book in terms of a message or a perspective change for your readers? Is there any one particular thing in there, or is it a general overview? What's the message that you're trying to give out, and how have you gone about delivering that message?
The message is I that I would like to share is that any woman who doesn't have to be repressed. She can have an unfulfilling sex life with her husband or whatever. And I wanted to open someone else's eyes the way my eyes were opened. And I hope that the things that I went through give some ideas and maybe some inspiration to find their own freedom. Yeah.
And is that just to go from a position of having no sex to having sex, or is that when someone is to be more exploratory in that domain?
Yeah, it can help anyone who has an unfulfilling sex life, not just someone who has no sex life, but it can be for anyone who isn't satisfied in their sex life.
And how do you go about changing someone's perspective in the book?
Well, that's a good question. Just by my experiences, sharing my experiences is what I hope. And it doesn't they don't have to do exactly what I did. These are just ideas and experiences to open another person's mind.
So you're offering, as we said, a different viewpoint for someone that can help maybe change that programming that they've got.
Exactly. That programming is pretty intense, pretty hard to change.
So how was your self-programming and self-talk and self-esteem and self-image, all of those parts change throughout this process? Are you still undergoing changes in your perspective currently, or do you feel that you've now hit a peak in terms of that awakening?
I think I've now, hit a peak, and I'm happy for what happened, and I'm sexually free, which is unbelievable after all this time of being repressed. So yeah, I feel I'm in a good place. And one thing, doctors are not really, often doctors are not really receptive to sex talk. Even, I mean, medical doctors, even psychologists. So I got lucky. And I hope maybe the influence that I got from doctors might help someone else reading my book, that they might be helped by by a doctor that helped me.
So did you continue to see the psychologist after they had spoken to you, or was it basically a one hit wonder, a one-stop shop where you spoke to them and you saw the change from there? Or, as I said, was it sort of a gradual process where you explained your situation, more like a counselling based approach or a coaching based approach?
I kept seeing them because I had emotional damage also from my childhood. I,
So that was like
you
the
know, I
maybe the
was,
counselling side that was going through the traumas and trying for you to get that off your chest, but then also providing maybe more of a coaching style where it's providing future action and something that you're comfortable with. Is that fair to say?
yeah, yeah.
Going back then, would you have changed anything? Life's very
But
easy, isn't it, to say, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that. But now in hindsight, in your 70s, would you go back and change anything?
are you asking me in the 70s and the going backward or now?
So when we look back at things, so for example,
Yeah.
I could say, I wish I'd done this at university. I wish I'd moved here, or I wish I'd read this book, or whatever it's going to be. Given you're at the latter stages of that journey now, would you have changed anything so that maybe you had not been so repressed from an early age? Maybe this awakening had happened earlier. Maybe you'd spoken to someone sooner. Any of those sort of things, really, Lynn.
Well, if I could go back and change anything, I would maybe change mothers, you know, because that's where all this came from.
Or just not get caught,
Huh? What'd you say?
or just not get caught.
Yes. If I could have not taken in so seriously what she said, yeah, I wouldn't have had to do any of this. But I wouldn't change anything from my development that I'm talking about to you.
Yeah,
I'm very glad I did that.
I think it's a time change difference as well, because I think nowadays, if you were the same 14-year-old today, number one, I think there's a slightly different view on things now than there was maybe back then, and secondly, there's so much information on the internet now that a child could get on their smartphone and type in, why do I feel like this, or any other internal questions they had, they could basically write onto Google and maybe find an answer. Do you feel that if that if you were 14 now, there would have been a different mindset for you than being, in the 50s essentially?
Well, yeah, it'd be great if I could have said, okay, that's her opinion. Now I'm going to live my life as I want to. But that was pretty impossible because it was drilled into me, things about my behavior.
Did you ever speak to your friends and well, not family, of course, any friends about it before seeking counsel?
No, because I didn't even know I was repressed.
But at the point you realized that you spoke to the urologist and the psychologist. Was there a point in time where, once you had that realization, that you spoke to a friend about it first, or was it straight to the specialists?
I didn't tell my friends or anyone else about it until the book was finished and I published it.
But when you were at school and when you were at that sort of age, when the repression was strong, did did your friends not talk to you about any of their sexual experiences
Nothing.
or anything like that?
Nothing. I mean, in a very light, very, very light way. Boys we were attracted to and stuff like that we thought were cute, but we never ever had any real kind of discussion about sex. Never.
So have you subsequently read, like you mentioned, you read and write some sort of erotic questions. Have you read 50 Shades of Grey, or are you into that sort of stuff, or not?
I don't have any regrets except what I experienced in my childhood and growing up years. That I wish, of course, had been different. But outside of that, I did the best I could. I did the best I could.
So if you had sort of a message to send to someone in a similar position to you as a child, with, I don't know, parents that that um that are controlling to some extent, and parents that have put a, whatever it's going to be, a condition on behavior, what would your advice be? Would it
It would be, think for yourself. Don't be intimidated by anyone, including your parents.
But is there a fine line between listening to your parents and knowing what not to listen to?
Yeah, good question. Good question. That's a very good question. Um, that's tough. That's tough.
There's no right or wrong, is there? It's there's grey areas, and it maybe
Yeah,
comes down to the individual to know what to filter out and what not to.
exactly. But it's difficult for a kid, or even young adult, if you've been hammered with these messages. That would be great if someone could separate the good from the bad instead of being overwhelmed, by the bad and what they said that was negative. That's very hard to do, especially for a kid.
But now you have got past the repression and you're in a good space. Are you in a relationship now? Are you seeking a relationship? What's the situation at your end? And do you feel that you are 100% cured of any past pain?
I'm not in a relationship right now. I would love to have one. So I'm in the seeking area. And I don't remember your last question, the last part of it.
And do you feel that you are 100% cured now?
Oh, yes, in that area. Yes. Yes, I do.
So you're in a healthy state of mind, looking for a healthy relationship. Are you going back onto those same sites, or are you on more of a
No.
relationship-based site currently?
I'm on a couple of dating sites, but one I just canceled. But no, I haven't felt the need to go back.
Okay, so here's a question then. So you're now on more traditional relationship sites.
Yes. Yes.
How do you feel a potential partner would feel about your journey? And obviously, let's just make the assumption that it doesn't matter what they think anyway, because opinions are like arseholes. Everyone has one. Doesn't really matter. But what do you feel they may say, whether you're bothered about it or not?
I have no idea, and it's another good question. Yeah, I really don't know. It's not something I talk about right off the bat when I meet someone. I feel if they have an open mind, they will tolerate or even accept the fact that it was what I needed to do at a certain time of my life.
Yeah. I also think as well, if you mentioned not mentioning right off the bat, I think if you were to mention it right off the bat, there would be two ends, for me anyway, thinking through it, there'd probably be two ends of the spectrum of people you would attract, if that makes sense. You'd
Yeah.
be sort of at the either end of the bell curve. And again, with perspectives, it's probably good for anyone really who has something that they've been through to try and not let that affect initial decisions.
Yes.
Because that, as we said right at the start, a statement or a perspective can have a long-lasting effect, can't it? Which then affects all other future behaviours, other future decisions, other future actions, and future opinions, doesn't it? So,
Yeah.
you've obviously got your book on sale now. Where can people find that book if they want to have a read? And is there any particular part of the book that you feel is the most powerful part for the readers?
I don't feel it's available on Amazon, and but I don't feel there's one part that's more important than the other. I interweave my background with seeking sexual freedom, so it goes back and forth. So it's a healthy balance, I think. Yeah.
Is there any planning for a second book of any kind, or do you feel that this book has summed up um, um, your challenges over your life?
It's been suggested to me to write another one. I'm not sure about that. I'm actually writing thrillers at this point, psychological thrillers.
Such as, like, what's the sort of, is it murder mysteries? Is it just exciting stories? What's the sort of?
Yeah, it's they're thrillers. They're mysteries, and they have murder in them, a little bit of sex.
As you would
And
expect now. I said, as you would expect.
yes, yes. That's in all my books.
Yeah.
Uh,
So what are those books called? Is there a series? Are they individual books?
they're individual stories. They're not published yet,
Okay.
but
When are you expecting them to be out? Are they going to be self-published as well, or published by a more traditional route?
sure. I'm kind of looking for a traditional way this time.
Okay.
So that's the route that I think I'm going to take.
And when do you expect those books to be available, and what are they going to be called, or what are they called?
I hope tomorrow.
Yeah. Realistically.
Yeah.
What about realistically? You obviously hope tomorrow they'll be out, but realistically,
Realistically,
when will they be out?
I don't know. I'm actually revising one of them.
Okay.
And when I'm finished with that, I'll send them out to agents. And it could
Fantastic.
be a few months before I finish it, something like that.
Excellent. Have you got any kids, by the way, from your marriage, previous marriage?
No kids.
No kids.
My parents made it sound so bad that they had a kid. So detrimental to their well-being that I thought, God, if it's this bad, I don't want to do it, you know. But again, I was very affected by the influence of my background.
How did your relationship change? Like, once you got old enough to be self-sufficient and self-reliant, did your relationship with your parents was it good? Was it average? Was it indifferent?
Well, at one point in my life, I became a professional pianist and singer. And I got jobs all over Sun Valley, Idaho. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a ski resort.
Yeah.
In Alaska. And no, it never changed. Never changed. There was always negativity. There was something happened that very early in my life, and it was very bad from my mother. And I never had the courage to ask her why she did it. I could never get myself to do it.
Is that a regret?
That is a regret. That is a regret. Yeah.
What do you think she would have said? Would you think it would have been to protect you, especially at that age, or do you think it would be something more sinister?
it wasn't to protect me. She picked up the phone, and when I wet my bed at 4, she picked up the phone and called a bad girls' school, take me away. So that was I never forgot it, and that yeah, I would have loved to have asked her about it.
I think from what you said,
What do I think she would have said?
yeah,
I don't know. Anytime I brought something up of a serious nature, she avoided it by saying, my doctor told me I can't be aggravated. And she repeated that phrase. So there was no real engaging with her.
sounds quite toxic, really. And there's really two ways that parents can not condition, but well, there is conditioning, really, classical and operant conditioning. So you either use the stick. So as you said, with your parents calling a fake nursery or wherever to say we're going to take you away, which is the stick method, or there's the carrot method, which is encouraging good behavior. For me, I feel that I work or react best to the carrot method, but everyone's different. And I think that it's something that over time, if we look at over the last 50, 60, 70 years, there's been a bit of a change, really, from the stick method to the carrot method. Now, I'm not saying that the stick method doesn't have its pros, because we can see today that there is a lot of, or there's a lack of discipline globally, and that maybe comes from the lack of the stick method. But do you feel that if your mum had been slightly different, you would have been in a better place psychologically at a young age?
If she hadn't done the things she had done, I would be in a better place.
Yeah.
No question. But the influence was tremendous. And as far as carrot or whatever stick, she wasn't trying to do anything positive. She was trying to get me to change my behavior from wetting the bed. That's the purpose of it, as I look at it now.
Yeah. So if people want to reach out to you and speak with you, maybe, or obviously get the books, where's the best place they can do that?
Well, I have a website. It's www.lynnbrownrosenberg.com. And there's a contact information there. And yeah, I'd love it if people reached out.
Well, we'll leave notes in the description, etc. But is there any sort of final points you want to make, or anything that you feel that we've missed in relation to your message?
I just had the best time. I had the best time. My eyes were opening and opening and opening, and also my I think it helped with my separation with my parents, because I was really doing something that they definitely wouldn't have approved of. So yeah, it's an opportunity to not just open yourself up, but to have fun. To have fun with sex is something that was absolutely foreign to me. So have a good time.
Well, it's good that you've managed to turn around the negative programming you had from a child to something more positive. And it's been lovely to have you on the show, Lynn.
Thank you.
As I said, we'll leave the notes for your contact details in the description. And yeah, as I said, it's been a great chat.
Great, thank you. Thank you.